My Constitution is a very flexible Constitution. You think the death penalty is a good idea? Persuade your fellow citizens and adopt it. You think it's a bad idea? Persuade them the other way and eliminate it. I have my rules that confine me. I know what I'm looking for. When I find it, the original meaning of the Constitution, I am handcuffed. If I believe that the First Amendment meant when it was adopted that you are entitled to burn the American flag, I have to come out that way. Even though I don't like to come out that way. Though I'm a law and order type, I cannot do all of the mean conservative things I would love to do to the society. You got me.
Justice Scalia setting out his philosophy of the Constitution right there. Let's talk to some guests now who know him well. Paul Clement, former Solicitor General, also clerk for Justice Scalia. Kate Shaw, our Supreme Court analyst. Terry Moran, who's covered the Supreme Court for us as well. And Mr. Clement, let me begin with you. You clerked for Justice Scalia. You argued before him. How will you remember him?
Well, I'll remember him just like in that clip. I mean, he really believed in the Constitution. He believed that the Constitution had to be interpreted in a way that constrained the justices so they couldn't just impose their own personal policy preferences. I'll remember him from oral argument. He completely changed the way that the Supreme Court handled cases and handled oral argument. Before he came to the court, it was quite common for advocates to make their argument and not get a single question from the justices, or at most maybe a handful. He got there, he started asking questions from day one, and even the colleagues who had been there a while started saying, well, we're not going to let this new guy ask all the questions. They got involved in it. It has fundamentally changed the way that the court holds arguments. And it fundamentally changed the way that, frankly, the court approaches statutes and constitutional law as well.
Let me just ask you quickly as well, you know, he has such a unique pen. What was it like to write a draft for him?
Well, we used to joke in the chambers that, you know, the only reason he asked for drafts from his law clerks is because he wasn't quite sure how to format a WordPerfect document on the computer. Because that voice you see in those opinions, that is all him. And he just had a gift, and it's changed the way I think students in law school look at the Constitution and the court. Because left or right, most students, the first thing they do is pick up the Scalia decision before they, even if it's a dissent, before they read the majority opinion. He was that gifted a writer.
That's where his impact is, less impact in moving his justices behind the scene.
Yeah, I think there's no question that he was the intellectual leader of the conservative wing of the court for essentially the whole time he sat on it. But you're right, he wasn't always victorious in advancing his positions. I don't know if it was the views he was espousing were too extreme. I don't know if it was a question of sometimes abrasive style. But he didn't always win in particular cases, and nonetheless, he had a transformational effect on the law, just in terms of how the court approaches legal questions.
Terry Moran, his biggest victory?
Well, I would think his most memorable victory, and it's of a piece with his whole judicial philosophy, is the great Second Amendment triumph in the Chicago gun rights case, where Justice Scalia, writing for a majority in the court, said the Second Amendment is an individual right, that well-regulated militia clause, that doesn't interfere, he said, with the individual right to bear arms. And that was of a keeping with his sense that the federal government's powers needed to be limited, needed to be checked, get back to the original intent. And you know, George, a lot of people in society have great, big, grand ideas. Very few of them make them as contagious as Antonin Scalia made his, through his writing, through his personality, through the fights he picked, the fights he loved to pick. As Dahlia Lithwick, one of our colleagues, put it, he made the founders cool again. And in many ways, his influence goes outside of the law into a whole way of looking at the kind of country we are.
Well said. Thanks to all of you. That's all for us today. Thanks for sharing part of your Sunday with us. I'll see you tomorrow on GMA.